The head of the United Nations has taken the world's major economies to task for failing to reduce carbon emissions, warning that the point of no return is fast approaching. Antonio Guterres says the global push to stop climate change has been utterly inadequate. He was speaking as a two-week international climate summit gets underway in Madrid. Here's more of what he had to say.
We are in a deep hole, and we are still digging. Soon it will be too deep to escape. I welcome the voices of the young activists I've been meeting. They understand that we are jeopardizing their future. That is why I will continue to push every day to keep climate at the top of the international agenda.
Antonio Guterres there. Well, many parts of the world are, of course, already feeling the effects of climate change. The Seychelles, for example, is an island chain in the Indian Ocean, is threatened by rising sea levels and the destruction of local marine life. But this low-lying nation, with its capital city of Victoria, is enacting policies it hopes will serve as an example for others.
Over 300,000 people a year head to the Seychelles to enjoy a holiday in paradise. The vast array of corals, fish and other marine life in the surrounding ocean is breathtaking. But this entire ecosystem is under threat from climate change. The president of the Seychelles called for urgent action when he took in the ocean floor earlier this year in a submersible vehicle.
Scientists have spoken. And politicians around the world, the time has come for us to act. I will be a strong ambassador and a strong advocate for marine protection around the world.
The most alarming problem for the Seychelles waters is rising temperatures. Warmer seas have bleached many of the coral reefs, damaging areas of natural beauty. For a country that relies on its fishing and tourism industries, the impending disaster could cost many people their jobs.
We are the least responsible for the problems of climate change, yet we are vulnerable. In fact, if we were different, the fight would have been different.
The Seychelles is working on a solution. A government-led initiative is turning 1/3 of the country's territorial waters, an area the size of Germany, into protected zones. These zones, stretching out from the country's inner islands and Aldabra Group Islands, aim to limit human activity and thus make marine life more resilient. Marine scientists from the University of Oxford and the Necton Institute have been examining the Seychelles waters.
There was an incredible diversity and abundance of fish, especially in protected areas like Aldabra, which shows that marine protected areas do work when they are put in place.
The Seychelles is aiming to become a model for marine protection around the world in an effort to slow the effects of climate change. Its president is hoping other countries will take notice.
We all know that we have a problem. What is needed is responsible global action. And there's no time for blame game.
The Seychelles and its president are already seeing the effects of climate change. They don't want discussion, they want action, now.
Well, will they see it? Let's talk about that more now with DW's Science and Environment reporter Louise Osborne. Good morning, Louise. The UN Secretary-General there is issuing a dire warning of the planet approaching the point of no return. Is there an expectation that this conference can turn things around?
Well, it's difficult to say whether it will turn it around completely. The motto for the conference this year is time for action, but really they're not quite ready for that yet. They're still trying to finish the rule book, which is something they should have completed last year in Katowice, but that they just were unable to agree on the last article, which is Article 6 and deals with carbon markets. So that's what they're going to be concentrating on this year. Another thing that they have to worry about is their ambitions. So the national targets that each country has made to reduce carbon emissions, if they keep going along that road and follow those targets, they won't be able to keep the temperature below 2 degrees Celsius, which is what the Paris Agreement calls for. It will be at least 3 degrees Celsius. So that's something else that they have to talk about to try to turn things around.
Okay, now, Guterres pointed to China as being a major offender. It's the biggest producer, 27% of the world's carbon emissions. Is it one of the countries that's not on target with the carbon markets that you mentioned?
Actually, that's not the case. It is on target. It's one of the only countries in the, one of the higher emitting countries that's on target to reach its goals. The problem is that the goals, like I said, are just too low. So even if China does get there, it's not going to make enough of a difference for temperatures to remain lower. There's also the issue of, emissions that are being made elsewhere by Chinese companies. So, for example, in Africa, where they're building power plants and things like that. And that is another contribution of China to global carbon emissions, just not done in China itself. So.
We were looking at the Seychelles there as taking a role model position. What needs to be done quickly to halt global warming? I mean, we're seeing it every year in the forest fires in Australia, rising temperatures, sea levels. What can be done to halt it quickly?
Well, what really would need to be done would be for countries to simply cut their carbon emissions. Obviously, that's not something that they're going to do straight away. Phase out of coal needs to be done very quickly. Environmentalists have been calling that. They actually worry that the carbon market issue that's going to be discussed this year will actually detract from just taking direct action and phasing out coal and cutting carbon emissions through transport, these kinds of things. Governments are still working out a way to do this, but they obviously need to do it more quickly.
Climate protests have been intensifying over the past year. We've been reporting extensively on that. The Fridays for Future movement, for example. What effects are these protests having on policymakers meeting in Madrid?
Well, I think governments are starting to feel the strain of having so many protests taking place. I mean, in September, millions of people took to the streets for the global climate strike. On Friday, it was hundreds of thousands of people. So governments are starting to feel the pressure of that. Like I said before, they really need to work on their ambitions, and that is what protesters are calling for. Greta Thunberg will be there this week. She's expected to arrive from her Atlantic trip tomorrow in Portugal, and then I guess she'll make her way very quickly to Madrid. She'll be talking again to leaders, and I'm sure that we can expect a speech that will, kind of match what she said in New York. So there will be that.
Okay, so she's very much a focal point for public opinion right now. Okay, Louise, thanks so very much for coming in on this.